if you listen to Kevin O'Leary talk, what he will say is the data centers are necessary for national security. We have to have the best data centers so that China does not get ahead of us, so that China does not outpace America. First of all, China has 385 data centers. We have over 4,000 data centers. But Kevin O'Leary is not a citizen of the United States of America. Kevin O'Leary is a citizen of Canada, Ireland, and the United Arab Emirates. So why is Kevin O'Leary lecturing us about our military and our national security? And why is Kevin O'Leary's supposed priority the military dominance of the United States of America when Kevin O'Leary is not even a citizen of the United States of America? And who are the people that are listening to this argument and saying, oh, yeah, that makes sense? The absurdity of that, the preposterous nature of that is wild. And it's honestly insane. And then this conversation takes us down the line of the other conversations that we've been having. When you listen to Kevin talk about data centers and people ask the question, well, why should the taxpayers subsidize you having these data centers? Why should the taxpayer have to pay for you to come in, increase their electricity bills, increase their water bills, make it more difficult on the environment, it's going to be 28 degrees hotter in the region when this data center is up and running. And someone like Kevin O'Leary will say, oh, this is just the way it is in capitalism. I'm not a bad person. I'm just playing the rules. But nobody is willing to ask the question, why are we doing it this way? Why are we not analyzing and looking at just because something has always been this way, just because capitalists have always been able to take advantage of municipalities, just because if they don't do it in your state, they will go to another state, does not mean that that is correct. That does not mean that that is the way forward that we have to go. We do not have to keep giving away our resources, our land, our energy, our children, our education systems, our healthcare, our environment, and our literal money just because a billionaire threatens us that they might move somewhere else. We have to stop with this playbook, this gaslighting and abuse from these billionaires. Because while our politicians are sort of pulling themselves over each other like crabs in a bucket, and that's exactly what they're doing, whether that's your municipal politicians or your governors or your congressional people, they're literally crabs in a bucket, pulling each other down and pulling you down with them, jumping over each other to try to get this next, stadium built or data center built or Amazon warehouse built. And they're doing it with diminishing returns. Well, we have to stop believing that the old way is working because we can clearly see that it's not. And while they're being the crabs in the bucket, trying to hoard themselves out to the next billionaire, your children go to school every day with the assumption from both your child, their teachers, and yourself that you're essentially gambling that nothing is going to happen to them that day. But let me close it out. Two things. Number one, in probably one of the most unlikely cities in the world that I thought this would happen, the citizens of Reno, Nevada, yesterday spent 7 hours at their community at a city council meeting demanding that the city stop building data centers. As I said, 7 hours. 7 hours of their time they spent telling their city council. And we have seen time and time again where citizens will go to these municipalities and beg not to have the data center, and then they do it anyway. But for the first time, and honestly, surprisingly in Reno, they said no. They stopped the data centers. They put a 30-day moratorium on the data centers so that they can analyze what's happening and that they can find a better path forward. Now, we don't know if this is going to mean no more data centers in Reno, but we do know that this is a victory. And we have to stop pretending that we're not winning when we do win. So the citizens of Reno put their foot down. They stopped these data centers for 30 days. And guess what? Elections are happening right now. So the politicians in Reno have an enormous amount of pressure on them, and they will have to decide, well, am I gonna, give away everything to Kevin O'Leary, never get elected again, or am I going to start listening? And the last part of it is, with everything that I just talked about, last night I had the very good fortune of attending an event for a gubernatorial candidate in Nevada. I always have to weigh like how I talk about these things and how I utilize my platform versus my constant desire to be independent. But what I would tell you is that when I went to, this was in Las Vegas. First of all, in order to get there, I had to drive through, I didn't have to. I ended up driving through a homeless encampment. And it was one of the worst displays of everything we just talked about. There were literally dozens and dozens of people in this homeless encampment living in extremely unsanitary conditions, literally camping themselves out between the divider lane of a road and underneath a bridge, underneath a major highway bridge, by the way. No one should have to live like that. And yet here we are openly discussing how it is that we're going to give away our resources again and again and again and again. And so it's not lost on me that as I was driving to this event for someone in political power, that I had to drive through, I keep saying had to, I'm sorry. I ended up driving through this homeless encampment. Well, when I got to this event with this incredible amount of like bad news, this incredible amount of like doom coming from the world, a lockdown at my son's school, I saw a room full of people who, against all odds, are coming together to support a candidate that they believe in, who are coming together in spite of odds, in spite of a political system working against them, in spite of the establishment of the Democratic Party essentially trying to squash their campaign. They're choosing to find hope. And if I'm being honest with you, I didn't particularly like, I do this thing a lot. It's easy for me now. I've learned how to do it, but in person, it's very uncomfortable for me. And I always have this sort of like umbrella over my head that's like, you see me on this phone, you see me on this computer, but the person you see in real life, it's not the same person. But I was greeted with just like enormous amount of kindness and positive energy. And it reminded me that there are, in fact, thousands, if not millions of people in this country, in this state, that want to push back, that want to do things to make their life better, to make your children's life better, and to make the world better. And it was a beautiful thing. It was an incredible way to cap out an incredibly chaotic day. And the number of things that had to happen for me to get there, I can't even begin to describe. So I have to believe that if you do what you are supposed to do in your life, if you gravitate towards the things that you're supposed to gravitate toward, doors will open up for you. That was a massive commentary for this morning. So, yeah, good morning. Welcome to the Ignition News. If you're new to the show, please consider following us on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, Apple News, Apple News, Apple Podcasts. We broadcast the show live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Other shows are uploaded to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to catch up with the show, please do. It's important that you follow them. The reason I say that is that our social media and our news media is being heavily restricted. The podcast space remains one space where we can connect as truthfully as possible. And it remains relatively uncensored. So yeah, I do also want to let you know some future programming updates. Next week, we're going to have a special segment from one of our Rebel Radio community members as we expand the Ignition News and Rebel Radio. And candidly, as we take on more projects to push back against this wave of fascism, I think you're going to be excited to see not only other people participating, but I think you're going to be excited to see the impact that we're having. And as much as I wanted to talk about stories today, I did pull up stories. What I'm realizing is that sometimes you have to reflect. Today was supposed to be a news day. It ended up being a day of reflection. And what I would reflect on is this has been an exhausting 18 months. It has been a 18 months of highs and lows, but we are still here. I remember during the 2024 election, someone called me and I picked up the phone. It was a phone banker and a canvasser. He's like, "Hey, this is so-and-so. I'm calling on behalf of Kamala Harris campaign." Yada, yada, starts going to the spiel. And I was like, "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to sell me on this. We're good." And I said, "Hey, thank you very much for what you do. Thank you for doing this. It's important. Everything is on the line. You have to keep going. And he stopped dead in his tracks, and there was just silence on the other end of the phone, and he started crying. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to share too much of what he said, but he was like, thank you. Like, all of the people I know are at risk. And so I said, keep going. You have to keep doing what you're doing. Well, we know what happened. We know where we are right now. But you have to keep going as well. We have to keep going. There are people who, even though we feel like we can resist sometimes, even when we get our ass kicked, there are people who don't at all feel like they can resist or push back. There are people whose rights have been taken from them and who continue to lose more and more rights every single day. I'll give you a quick overview of what I wanted to talk about today. Thematically, the first one is that the president has settled his tax situation with the IRS, purportedly creating a $1.7 billion slush fund of taxpayer money. It's not only probably unconstitutional, it's also probably illegal. The president is returning, I believe now, or is set to return from China in what is basically the end of American hegemony. For the first time in history, a president of the United States sat in a room with the leader of China, and it was unclear who the actual leader of the world was. We have lost credibility on the world stage, but to see the president essentially suborn himself to Xi on the world stage, that he had to bring his little cartel of Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and tech titans. I don't mean to be cruel when I say this, but did you ever participate in like Mathalon or like a science fair or like a spelling bee or like a science project? And it was like one of those ones where it was like multiple schools. And then there was just like a school that came and they were just like clearly, they just weren't prepared to be there. That's us now on the world stage. We're the school that isn't prepared to be there. We're underfunded. We're prioritizing the wrong things. And now it shows. And, the last part is, we'll have to cover this story later. But when we talk about these billionaires, we talked about Kevin O'Leary, obviously, today. When you look at what's happening in New York City, we're starting to finally see a model of exactly the opposite. The opposite of the Kevin O'Leary, oh, you have to give me everything. If you don't give me everything, I'm going to leave. You have a mayor in New York City who's saying, pack your bags, baby. If you leave and you sell your house, that's just one more house that's available in a market that we already need housing in. Or you don't like being taxed? Tough shit. And we're seeing the disillusionment, the breakdown, the crumbling of this gaslighting of the billionaires that's, well, you have to give me everything or you're going to have nothing. And finally, you're starting to see with Mamdani, oh, we can balance the budget. We can provide more and more services to our taxpayers. If you pay money with taxes, you're going to get something back from your government. We're going to find and root out corruption. If the city employee or a county employee is doing something wrong, we're going to hold them accountable and fire them if we have to. No one is above the law, including the people who work for the government. We're going to start to find ways to take care of our homeless and unhoused population. We're going to start to find ways to clean up the literal streets. So yes, it is a lot. Yes, sometimes we have to analyze what path we have forward. But what I would tell you, and something I don't reflect on a lot, is the lesson that I learned last night. There are more people than you could possibly believe who think the way that you think. But just like I occasionally need, and you occasionally need, to find reinforcement, support, and rest, they need that as well. They need to know that they are not alone, just like you need to know that they are not alone and that you're not alone. So part of your responsibility in this time is to continue to lift other people up, to elevate their stories, to hold them up when they need to be held up. So part of what we're doing is not only resisting, but persisting, finding people and recognizing them. One of the things, and where I'll close out the show today, one of the things that I have really started to teach myself to do is to pour out support. It's just not something that's happened to me in my life, to be honest with you. No one ever trained me to pour out support. So I've had to train myself to find people. And I'm asking you to train yourself to do that as well. To find people and to over-index on telling them you're doing a good job, you're not alone, I saw what you did, it has an impact, and if you need anything, let me know. When you're constantly in the fire hose, which we are all in the fire hose all the time. When you're constantly in the fire hose, the billionaires and the politicians, and they're throwing everything at you. Sometimes you don't realize, like, oh, I'm still standing against all this, and you certainly aren't equipped for it. But sometimes you need to, like, push up the water a little bit for the person standing next to you and say, like, oh, hey, we're still fucking here. That's hilarious, right? So do that. That's the Ignition News. When I say Ignition News, today was more like the Ignition 22 minutes of commentary. We'll be back on Monday live. We broadcast the show live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Go ahead and find us over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You have a great day. This is May 15th, 2026. Stay lit. Yeah. That was the first time ever that Instagram didn't get shut down.